Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Purpose Tune podcast. My name is Kong Shong, and I am the host of this podcast. The goal of this show is to create valuable content to broaden your knowledge, inspire you to act, and get you in the right mindset so you can apply it in your own life to drive impact, generate meaning, and achieve your purpose. I know it's been a little over a year since I've done this recording, and I wanted to just say hello again. But before that, I want to just really just introduce my guest. His name is Enrique Acosta Gonzalez. Enrique is the CEO of Triad Leadership Solutions and a retired Navy senior chief. He is a LinkedIn top voice in leadership and a 2024 CEO of the year. Based on his fascinating background, I wanted to take him to my podcast and introduce to you all about his life experiences, as well as personal experiences, and share a little bit about how we can achieve purpose in our life. So, Enrique, welcome to the show. How's it going?
Yeah, thank you, Cog. Thank you for inviting me and having me to share some of my insight.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Of course, as you know, I have a passion in leadership development, and when I came across your LinkedIn profile, which is how we knew each other, I had to reach out to you and just introduce myself. And based on our initial conversation, really enjoyed everything that I've learned about you and your background, and wanted to bring you on. In addition to my um, just wanting to learn more about how your experience was like in the military as well, so we can have a little bit of insight on that. But aside from my introduction to you about you, could you share a little bit more about yourself to my audience?
Yeah, sure. So, as you mentioned, I served in the military. So I was in the Navy for 26 years, retired out of the meteorology and oceanography community. So I was those for a good all of my career. I also dabbled a little into hydrography. And so it was a fun 26 years. Well,
Wow.
when I retired, I decided to bring my children to where would be the most fun, and Orlando was it since we have all these parks around us, and they've thoroughly enjoyed that. But I left the military and had to find a new career, right? And that's challenging, I'll tell you, to say the least, right? I
Right.
decided that after a couple of stints at corporations that I would probably best suited for leadership development, but on my own. And so that's where Triad Leadership Solutions spun off of. And I've been doing that ever since. And what we focus on is primarily leadership development for executives, but I do have a lot of clients that are single clients where they're trying to drive to the next level. And so we help them get there.
That's amazing. And describe to me, what industry do you specialize in, types of leaders that you've worked with? What has the result been for them?
Yeah, the primary client base is out of entrepreneurship. So those single owners, right? Those guys and gals that are trying to make it on their own. And I'll tell you that it's more challenging to get a person that is in leadership develop or in a leadership position that is surrounded by a ton of people because they tend to think that they can get what they need from them,
Mhm.
not knowing that leadership development is first inner than outer. And so when you try to go about leadership development from any other angle, you're going to be missing a big piece of what truly is needed for you to be an effective leader. So I focus on entrepreneurs primarily. There have been some clients abroad that are company owners, but those are folks that are not afraid to go into deeper waters. And so, yeah, entrepreneurs is usually where I'm at.
Very nice. And how did you get into this work of entrepreneurship, leadership?
Yeah, it was funny because I came, like I said, out of the meteorology and oceanography community.
Mhm.
But in the military, from day one, you're a leader. right? You have to be able to take an order, get a group of people, fulfill the order, get the task done, come back, report. And if you have to digress from leadership, then you do. Sometimes you get put on something else, right?
Right.
So leadership has always been part of my life, even prior to the military. But I did it as a senior enlisted for over 12 years. It was probably the second choice to what I could do, either be a broadcast meteorologist on the news, which I really did not want to do. The second option is, hey, you do this leadership stuff very well. You've been effective. You've gotten people in the military and commands in the military to their highest achievements that they can come to. Maybe you can replicate this and do it for civilians, right? So that's what I ended up doing, taking all of that military service, the experience, and packaging to a new client.
Very nice. Sounds pretty complex, but at the same time, it's good work. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really just have a sense of appreciation for folks that come from the military service background. My father was also in the military, and so he role modeled for me what work ethic was like, as well as serving was like. And I think that folks that come from the military background have a strong sense of self because they've served, and there's a deep connection between who they are and their why. And so I wanted to bring you on because part of it was because of your military service, but also because there has to be a strong sense of why that drove you to be in the military and even now serving leaders. So, how do you describe your why and how do you describe purpose?
Yeah. Well, my why is legacy at this point in time. And you'll notice that your why will change throughout your life. It won't stay the same, right?
Mm,
Your purpose may be the same, but your why, it'll differ, right? When you're single, your why is you. Then
right.
you get married, and then it's the married life. You get a child, then it's that child. And it's hardly even ever the married thing again. It's that child, making sure that you do everything for that child. Child's move on, then it's back to your wife or your husband, right? Those whys will differ throughout your lifetime, and you have to anticipate that and also be okay with that.
Mhm.
But your purpose now is something more less tangible, right? You can't that's always something you're looking for. What's my purpose? What's my purpose? And sometimes we confuse purpose with our why, right? There comes a time where your purpose can align, or let's just say your why can align with your purpose. But the purpose is a tough one to get on.
Mhm.
But my purpose is to ensure that everybody I get an opportunity to speak to, engage with, have some time with, understands that their unique value is theirs and no one can take it from them. But you also can't just hide it, right? So if I can get someone to understand that they were put here because they can only do what they do, then I've not only fulfilled my purpose, but also have unveiled theirs.
Right. And that leads to impact, right? It's really finding what moves you and drives you and how that can inspire others to move them and drive them to achieve their own why. For me, when I think about purpose, it's really an evolving thing, meaning that when you're single, your purpose is one thing. When you're married, your purpose is another. And so it's really, it should always evolve because we as human beings are always evolving based on our life experiences, relationships, and so forth.
Well, that's what I was referring to, right?
Right.
And I think, you know, and obviously people will differ, but I believe what you're describing is your why, because your purpose is always aligned with you.
Mm.
Your why will change based on others,
Mm.
but your purpose will always be aligned with you, the individual that was made to live this life. And so, yeah, I just wanted to add that.
That's fascinating. I actually have not heard it described that way. I've always thought that purpose and why are kind of the same thing. But what you're saying is that they can actually be separate. And so purpose is really something that's almost innate in us versus your why is something that's developing and will always continue to develop because you're always developing as a human being. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the why is often influenced by others.
Mm.
Right? So if I want to go to, and I'll give you an example because as a married man, I experienced this. So if I want to go to that game, you know, I want to. That's my why. That day, that's my why. Until my wife says that there's something else competing, and then that kind of went out the window.
Hmm.
Now that why that she may have brought up because we're both maybe sharing in that, then now that becomes my why.
Mm.
But my purpose is not the game. My purpose is not that activity with my wife. My purpose has nothing to do with any activity because it is like, they'll tell you, no one can fulfill the purpose that was given to you on this earth except you. So that's why it's singular. No one can fulfill it.
Hmm.
If you don't do it, there's going to be a gap in this world.
Hmm.
But if I don't go to the game, there's not going to be hardly any gap. No one's going to even care that I showed up or not. But if I don't fulfill my purpose, there's going to be some gap for someone on this earth.
Right. Because as you previously stated, only you can fill that gap. What do you say to people that may be dealing with imposter syndrome or think they're not good enough to lend the voice into this world, that they think they don't have any gifts to offer? What's your how do you respond to that?
My first question is, who told you that?
Hmm.
And who are you comparing yourself to?
Mm, yeah, very powerful. I
Yeah,
think.
yeah, we often, so we're, you know, as a child, we're taking in everything, even if we don't want to. We, that's the role of a child, is to absorb as much as they can so that when they have to decide for themselves, they have enough information to make a wise decision.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, broken people only know how to give out shards of glass.
Hmm.
Right? So, in those sharings from these people, we get cut. We get cut. And so, we often tend to believe their narrative of us, and we get buried with those narratives to the point where we can't create our own.
Right,
So that's why I start with, who told you that?
right.
And most people would say, well, you know, I heard, you know, I was never going to be nothing. Well, all right, so let's explore that. Right?
Mhm.
What does nothing look like? Right? And have you been representing nothing all your life? No, I've done. Okay, well then, you know, so, and then also the question of, Who are you comparing yourself to? Because we do that a lot as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll give today. I was looking at something and I looked at it and I felt this thing where I had to check myself. Now, thankfully I'm self-aware enough to say, "Hold up, now that's not even right. Don't even go there." Yeah, but most people don't have that. You have to develop that. And I was feeling like, man, I've done all this, and you know, well, where's that? Yeah, which is probably the worst thing anyone can do
Mm-hmm.
is to look at another yard and feel like they are lacking. Because the moment you do that, you've already gone down a path of not good enough. And
Right.
so you have to be wise enough to check yourself like, no, that's not your role. That's not your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So you let them fulfill theirs and you worry about yours.
Right. I read or remember I read a quote from the personal development guru Les Brown that he says something along the lines of someone's opinion of you does not determine who you are. And I think that resonated with me so deeply because it's just an opinion. What really matters is our view of ourselves. And I think we get to a point in which we can think highly of ourselves by equipping ourselves with skills, knowledge, abilities to perform, perform at our job, lead a business, lead our life, which is why I think it's so crucial that for an individual, if they want to be on this journey of purpose, that they should switch their identity and consider themselves as a lifelong learner in order to grow and evolve to the person that they want to be. And so, I've certainly had my opinions about social media because not everything people post on social media is a fact and it's a lot of opinions. But what I can say is that when we read the books that can help us develop our confidence, shift our mindset, and really understand ourselves so that we have the ability to be self-aware, to your point previously, then we can really make an impact in this world. And so for example, I never envisioned myself as a podcaster. I started the show because we had too much time in our hands during COVID, being locked in, our rooms and apartments and homes. And so I had all of these creativity that I wanted to leverage. And so didn't know how to start a podcast, but learned through reading books and, YouTube and talking to people. And now, 70 something episodes later, here I am. And I think that that goes to say that I'm an example that things are possible if you have the willingness to learn and to grow. And so, having said that, I'm fascinated by your military background, of course, but how did you transition into, um, I guess, civilian world? I'm sure there were some processes that you had to learn how to shift your mind to get back into the, so to speak, normal day, normal life of an American. Could you share with us what that process was like for you?
Yeah, well, there's never a switch of mind. It's impossible to take 26 years of one way of thinking and operating and asking someone to switch their mind to civilian.
Mm.
I would have to forget the whole entire 26 years in
Right.
order to get there. So what I encourage folks to look at this transition as is treat your military career as an education.
Mm-hmm.
Treat it as you did your bachelor's degrees, your master's degrees. You're getting exposed to information. Put that on a plaque, put it on the wall, and say, I did it. And move about. The thing is that the civilian community only gets one way of thinking, and we have gotten two. So for those in military that are having a tough time transitioning, as I did, I need them to understand that you are at an advantage and not a disadvantage. The issue is that a military complement of folks represent 1% of the American population. I've often said that we are the 1% that the 99 learned to live without for whatever amount of time you were in. I was almost 3 decades, right? So the last time they saw Enrique was a long time ago. And so here I am coming out into a world that's been running. They've been running. So imagine if you uh, uh, jump into a triathlon at the last quarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number one, the race has been going, so you're missing a lot. But the thing is that you're at the last quarter. So how much
Right.
really do you have to do in order for you to finish? And so there is a lot of benefit to it. But the transition was difficult because no one really knows how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of folks that will tell you and give you some suggestions, but guess what? That was just for their journey, right? This transition is kind of like purpose. You only get one. It's yours. You got to own it. How do you want to do it? And it took me a long time. It's still an issue because if I go to a work site and people are getting there late, I'm getting upset.
Right.
Why? Because we show up 15 minutes early. You know, uh, and so it is something that will be with us for the rest of our life. You just have to know when to digress from your knowledge in military
Mm-hmm.
and when to bring it forward to add value.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can do that, I guess you'll be a fruitful citizen back into the into the community.
Right. What's the top three traits of a great leader?
Well, number one, you have to be a great leader.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be that. How do you get to be a great leader? Number one, be a great follower.
Mm-hmm.
A leader that has forgotten how to follow has already stopped being a leader.
That sounds like a contradictory point. I know what you're saying, but to some folks, they're like, "Well, how do I become a leader if I'm a follower?" I mean, those are two different things. So,
Yeah,
can you
because
elaborate more?
yeah, so a follower, and this is what I mean by it. A leader that cannot adjust their leadership positioning from being at the front of something to being at the middle of something to being at the back of something with the rest of the followers cannot help that whole complement of people that are following them. Because if you're always at the front, because you're a leader, you may let some stragglers die. Instead of saying, I know I'm the leader, but I have some people that need some help. Let me go to the back. Hey, Johnny, hey, Susie, you got it for right now. I got to go get so and so. And that positioning and ability to go up and down that ladder is what makes you a great leader.
Mm.
Not just because you're at the front and you're doing all the orders and you're leading all the way, because you can forget about your people easily. And so that's what I mean by a person that is a great leader is also a great follower.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think leaders, there's a saying in leadership that leaders eat last. I think that's probably something that the leadership professor Simon Sinek was saying. It's really how can you take care of your people, and that is really understanding where they're coming from, having the ability to empathize and relate to your people so that you can lead more effectively. And if that means leading from the not from the front, but from the back, then so be it. Because leaders take care of folks in the front and the back, not just the front. And the leaders that I've gone to work with and have had the privilege to work with, the one of the traits that I see of them is the ability to not only have high emotional intelligence, but also decency quotient. So, of course, we know high emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is simply the ability to empathize and relate with people and put yourself in their shoe and really seek to understand where they're coming from, right? The level beyond that is now that they're able to obtain the information that's required to lead by leveraging emotional intelligence, what are they going to do with that information? Are they going to use it for good or for bad? And that's
Yeah.
where decency quotient comes in. So there's almost a more obligation um, that that's tied to this concept of decency quotient. And so I've been very fascinated by that quote, by that concept, because we have seen leadership play out in the public arena. And I can see why someone invented such a concept to rate leaders how morally good or bad they are, right? Based on the information that they're able to gather. And so, do you have any insight into that? Have you heard of decency quotient? Have you seen it played out in your own experience working with clients? You know, any thoughts?
Yeah, well, as you was talking, there's a high demand on leadership to be sympathetic and empathetic,
Hmm.
but you hardly ever hear people say compassionate.
Mm.
Empathy alone won't do it all.
Hmm.
You have to let empathy open the door for an act of compassion.
Mm.
And so it's that area that we start seeing this quotient thing, right?
Right.
That's where, because now you've stepped beyond the understanding of what this person is going through and are actually acting in favor of that person.
Mm.
That's what people need. Yeah. And so I've heard a lot of, oh, empathetic. You got to be empathetic. But I could be empathetic all day long and do nothing for you. It's compassion that leaders have to get to,
Mm.
because that's where I've just applied my empathy and my resources to help you out.
Hmm.
And you know, it's way beyond just feeling what they're feeling.
Right. It's also what actions will the leader take to make sure that they are taking care of their people, right? Like they can listen and, empathize with their people, but what's the next step to ensuring that their people are being taken care of? And that's where compassion comes in. It goes a step forward and say, let me help you out. This is what, you should do, XYZ, right?
Yeah, and that's an act of decency, right? That's that you've taken an issue, you uh, you haven't resolved it. You're addressing it, but you're addressing it to the point where it can be resolved.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. That's wonderful to hear. What does success mean to you?
to me, it's going to be different than to everybody else, right?
Right.
You have to decide what that is. Some people have a very low bar on what success is. I
Mhm.
woke up that morning. Well, if you ask me, that's a huge thing, right? If I woke up, I'm winning, right?
Right.
And I'm always conscious of that. I remember doing a research to see how many people in America die per night.
Mm,
And across the states, there are about 8,200 people that die a day
wow.
for whatever amount, for whatever reason, right? And every time I wake up, I remember thinking, I'm not 8,201. I'm not, that's not me. Um, and it puts you into perspective.
Mhm.
How much of life's demand are you going to put on yourself to require any success beyond waking up?
Mhm.
These things that we attain are just temporary accolades, right? They're
Right.
temporary. In the grand scheme of things, if you ask me, don't really mean nothing.
Right.
At the end of it all, they're really not going to amount to nothing. So,
Mhm.
what is success? A life well lived. A life well lived. If I can live my life in the purpose I was made for, and at the end of my existence, people can say, I'm better off today for knowing Enrique.
Mhm.
I think I've done pretty good.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's beautiful, beautifully said. I think to some people, success means money. To others, it means relationships. And to you, it means something, different. So I think just like purpose, everyone has their own destiny, and it's up to them to find a path to achieve it, to reach that destiny. And the same with purpose, the same with our why. It's because we're all uniquely designed by the creator, if we believe that, to share our light in this world. And that's why an artist must paint, a writer must write, a singer must sing, right? It's we all have our own unique gifts and talents, and we must utilize it to make the greatest impact in the world. Otherwise, there will be a gap, as you say, um, and the world will never know had you, not share that gifts. And so, I think in similar terms with success, success to me means that made the I've maximized out my humanity to make the greatest impact in my relationships, in my community, in my society, in my country. And I think that has it implies a notion of fulfillment, because you can have success but are not fulfilled. And so for me, based on my understanding of success, the only way how I can achieve success is through making the greatest impact that leads to fulfillment, where I'm complete, that I was designed by the creator to leverage my gifts and talents to improve people's lives for the better. And I'm not saying that, having money is a bad thing. I think having money is a great thing. I mean, I've seen very wealthy individuals donating to nonprofits, charitable organizations that they care about deeply, and that that makes a lasting impact on the individuals that rely on those services. So I think we have to continue to learn new ways of thinking, acquire uh, skills and knowledge in order to understand ourselves better so that we can use our gifts and talents to make the greatest impact. Do you have any, I see in your background you have a few books, or maybe it's just a virtual background, I don't know, it doesn't, but do you have any books that you would recommend for my listeners when it
Yeah,
comes to leadership or leading a purposeful life or happiness?
yeah, there's a couple that quickly come to mind. Easy reads. Uh, so Engage, Invest, Grow by Ali Braswell is a book about relationships. It's something that leaders need to start honing their skill on, because a lot of our ability to help in compassion for our team members is having great relationships, right? Maybe I don't have that resource, but I know someone,
Hmm.
right? That's a very powerful position to be in as a leader. And so that book really talks about building relationships, and it's wonderful. The second one I would suggest is Catching Leadership. It
Hmm.
is an angler's perspective on leadership, but
Hmm.
well done. Michael Leadham, he is just great at illustrating the sport of fishing and its correlation with leadership. You'll love it.
Hmm.
So I would suggest those two right off the bat.
Very nice. That's amazing. So we talked about traits of a leader, effective leader, but we didn't really complete what other traits that a great leader will have. So you recall, if I recall correctly, you mentioned, uh, in order to be a great leader, you have to be great. What was the other two habits?
Well, the first one was be a great follower,
Oh,
right?
yes, that's
Great
right.
follower.
Be a great follower, and then,
Uh, Number two would be a truthful leader.
mm,
A leader that leads with truth never has to backstep ever. They will always be at the front line leading their people with the truth that they possess.
mhm,
If you start dabbling in misinformation, not to say a lie, misinformation,
mm,
just to get yourself ahead, you will always be behind, because now you're going to have to kind of hide whatever mistruths you may have in
right.
order for, or bring those out in order for you to continue that progression. So truth has to be at the forefront of a leader's leadership.
Mhm,
If you can do that, you will save yourself and you will save your people.
mhm,
So that's the second one. The third one would be, don't be too proud to beg for help.
mm,
If you're too proud to beg for help, you will not only shrink your ability to grow, you will devastate the ability for your people to grow.
right.
And so if you can say, hey, I don't have this one in the bag, folks, if you can help me, is anyone here well versed with so and so, whatever the subject may be?
Mm-hmm.
That not only allows your people to say, "Whoa, okay, he doesn't. Okay, so he doesn't know this," but he's allowing us to see if we can. And I happen to know about that. You've just engaged your team in an event that they'll never forget because the solution came from the team and not just the leader. A
Mm-hmm.
leader cannot be the know-it-all.
Right.
Even if they do, they have to allow their team to shine and to enlarge and to increase and to get better and to feel like their contributions are worth the effort. And if you can do that as a leader, and those three, I think you'll be in good setting.
Wow. That's incredible. Um, I think that the last trait that you shared really is about how can you get your team to achieve their fullest potential. And you mentioned that they have to contribute in order to feel like they're resourceful, that they're needed. Otherwise, what's the whole point of them working with you, right? And I think as individuals, I think this is probably a basic human need is that we have to make sure we have to feel like our work matters. And when a leader is able to to build and cultivate a work environment where the individual's work and the individual matters to the organization, then that's where things can truly shine. And your other point about, being a truthful leader is really important because in today's digitalized society where we gather information from everywhere and everyone and everything, it's how do you differentiate what's truth and what's not? And so it's important more than ever to make sure that we look at things with a critical mind, which is what critical thinking is really okay. So I'm presented this statement. Is it a fact or an opinion? Is it someone's perception or is it based on a study? And so it's important that as we continue to lead in our personal and professional lives, that we keep an open mind to what's being shared and question the things that are being shared to us versus taking it all in and just agreeing for the sake of agreeing and have the courage to challenge not just ourselves but the others when information is being presented to us. I think that's what a good leader is, as well. um I know we're about that time, and I wanted to ask, what advice would you give my listeners as it comes to leadership or purpose or achieving a fulfilling life?
Let's talk about achieving a fulfilling life, and kind of piggyback some of the earlier conversation.
Hmm.
If you live in comparison, you'll never get there. Decide what you want to do. Do you want to continue to put yourself against someone else, or dig out who that yourself looks like? And the world of comparison, the world of filters, the world of misinformation, all that, it's really muddying the waters of people's clarity of themselves. And so, as a leader, your people deserve a clear minded person, a person that is sure about who they are, that does not need to compete with their team members,
Right.
or stab them in the back because they're looking like they're getting the next high, the next position. Be sure and learn who you are. And I think a lot of things will work out in your favor once you've identified who you are and start living it.
Mhm. Yeah, I think thank you for sharing that. I think that's very useful for the folks that are looking to seek a leadership position or are currently leading but want to enhance their leadership skills. I think the ability to understand oneself and have, a strong sense of self-awareness really will be helpful to leading or being a leadership position. So I thank you for sharing that. Um, for the folks that do enjoy this podcast, where can they find you? On your website, do you have a Instagram page? What's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, the best way would be on LinkedIn, Enrique Acosta Gonzalez. If you search that name on Facebook or Instagram, you'll find me there as well. I believe there's a one afterwards, but you'll see the picture.
Mhm.
Our website is on our link tree on LinkedIn. And so you can go there and our contact info and get that. Also, our podcast is listed on there, so you can enjoy that as well.
Very nice. Well, folks, I really do hope that you took away some useful insights from this talk, and feel free to reach out to Enrique and reference how you discovered him. And I also hope that you guys will like and subscribe to this podcast. Thank you so much for listening in. Enrique, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. And if anyone listening will reference that you heard this and connect with me on LinkedIn, the first one that does will get a free copy of Engage, Invest, and Grow.
There you go. That's coming directly from the man. Thanks for sharing, Enrique. Appreciate that.